I read Jack's Staff 2. From the Shadows, Blood. Another nice colourful image here. This has to be the brightest that stabbing undead bloodsuckers in the nighttime streets of London has ever looked. The artist, Cletus Cassaday, is credited before the writer on the cover. Not entirely unearned, but it is the correct way around on the other two issues. Raab, the writer, is credited before Cletus Cassaday, the artist. Like the first part, we have a fold-out recap. Cast of characters, backstory, lovely stuff. The Draculas are searching for the Holy Grail, and they mustn't have seen Indiana Jones because that actually shows where it is. It is in a canyon in Turkey. The hot woman died trying to get it. Speaking of dying, Kenneth is dying. His blood disease is consuming him. What's the frequency, Kenneth? The frequency is death. We have a lot of shit about Kenneth hating on his mum for her restored youth and health, while he lies there dying. Firespit isn't in this series that much. This issue contains the most of her contributions to this miniseries. But every time she makes an appearance, she is beautiful. Although not much of it in here, we do get to explore Firespit and her response to, and her part in this story, in both the new Invaders series, which she stars in, especially that sequel story in it, which we will be looking at, and then in Captain Britain and MI13. She is a main character in that as well. And there is stuff with Wesley Snipes. And then later, a whole Dracula story. But by the end, I didn't much like what it does with Firespit, Jack's Staff, or much of anything. Here, to start things off, we have an excellent splash image of Jack's Staff. What a brilliant artist this was. Dead at 52. Worse, spent his twilight years wasted on books by scumbags like Warren Fallis. Are you ready for a history lesson on the Holy Grail? Are you? I'm not going to do one. Just go and watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Or go watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Have I ever mentioned, this is good, I wasn't allowed to watch Monty Python because my dad has a phobia of snakes. This isn't a bit, well, I did actually do it as a bit, mind. But yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch it because of snakes. I remember there was also a board game version of Snakes and Ladders. That is what we call Shoots and Ladders over here. And the board game version had plastic snakes and plastic ladders that you could put anywhere on the board. But my dad threw out all the snakes, so instead it was just the least challenging game ever invented. I did say spam a lot though. The West End musical based on Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Jim Robinson from Neighbours was King Arthur. Romany Wisdom, that is this hot goth chick's name. This is how ugly she looks in Warren Fallis books. Warren Fallis's idea of attractive is always a chain-smoking, Aryan wet dream. Weirdly, I think this character's history is she was introduced by Raab, the writer of this and Excalibur, and she at least looked consistent between those two books. She looks beautiful in this, but she doesn't look half bad in Excalibur either. And then Warren Fallis wrote her and made her into his fantasy. A lesbian European woman that he thinks his dick can convert to heterosexuality. While Jack Staff meets with the dying Kenneth is slowly being seduced by Draculaism. We have the leggy bird, Baroness Legs. She is promising how Kenneth will be able to live unencumbered by his illness if he becomes a Dracula. Jack Staff comes to Firespit demanding to know more about Barry Bloods, which is odd because he was there last time. He knows about him. Add on, he even battled him again in Knights of Penzance. He knows all about Barry Blood already. Tom Beevort, editor. This is the standard from here on out. We get some info dump on Barry Blood, but only his original story in Invaders. You know, the one that came out in the 70s. Firespit looks immaculate. We also have Baroness Legs, and we get a backstory here. Barry Blood sucked her off. Barry Blood killed her family, but spared her and transformed her into a Dracula. You see, there is another plan at play here. Baroness Legs, who actually doesn't have that great a set of legs. I don't know why Jack Staff would have commented on her as a leggy bird. Part of the plan, though, is to bring about a second Barry Blood. Kenneth is heir to the Jack Staff legacy, but he is also nephew of Barry Blood. He could just as easily be heir to that legacy as well. And it is quite sad to see a guy so low. Kenneth is suffering, and his weakness isn't really a flaw. But he submits. He succumbs to the fantasy of immortality as a Dracula. I have reviewed it already, but there is an Excel story arc which explores Kenneth a bit more, maybe. We get to see him actually as Jack Staff. It is, like this story, built heavily on the Royce Sternum and Jason Byrne Captain America story. So far, this issue is lacking in action, but it is a great story and a great miniseries. I don't think it was meant to be read issue by issue. This is an early example of summer feeling written for a trade. More splash imagery here, Jack Staff on a motor bicycle. And then we get to what would be the action of this issue. Jack Staff, he investigates a museum break-in where the Holy Grail has been stolen. And he is attacked by Barry Blood. This is some lovely action, really amazing art throughout. Colours too. I think the colours are spectacular. They take Cletus Cassaday's amazing pencils and inks and render them like a comic book. His more famous artwork is usually treated with more depth to the colour palette, or dare I say it, digital Photoshop colours. They try to make it look as photoreal as possible. I prefer this. Easily, I prefer this. I think most people prefer this. Colours carry a lot of weight in this. Our twist ending is Barry Blood. Barry Blood is Kenneth, and he is going to suck off Jack Staff's neck. Exactly like the cliffhanger ending to the Captain America issue. A cliffhanger which has the worst possible deflation at the start of the following issue. We will see how this handles the same thing tomorrow. This miniseries is a wonderful detour to make in 1999. Well, issue 1 came out in 1998, the last two in 1999. I recommend this, clearly. I reckon you should read it. 7 thumbs up.